Hello, I'm Sarah Steyer, and I'm going to be talking about how the content of this class relates to my life and my career. One of the first things we learned about this semester are values and attitudes and how that affects your job satisfaction. For me, I'm relatively satisfied in my position. Nothing in the company's values doesn't align with my own. But there are some things within a sales role that doesn't necessarily sit well with me. So I did not start out in a sales role in this position. I started out in customer success, which is just essentially I help my customers use the product that they have purchased to its fullest capabilities, make sure that they're trained, and then make sure that they're happy with what they've got. Now I'm in more of an account management position where I'm also doing sales. And sales, if you've ever been in that, it can get a little bit questionable from time to time. People tend to stretch the truth. So that's one of the things that for me, my job satisfaction has lowered since taking over this position. Yes, it's been a promotion, but at the same time, there's aspects of it that I don't agree with. Um, Whether or not that has affected my work, I guess it's affected my motivation to do the work. However, I'm also the only team member in the US, so all of the work falls on me. So I remain motivated by the fact that if I fall behind, there's no one else to help me pick up the slack. But still, that doesn't mean that my job satisfaction is high and that my motivation is stemming from my job satisfaction. And of course, your job satisfaction has an effect on your general performance. So if you are not happy with what you're doing, you're probably not going to be performing at 100%. Emotional intelligence was something else we learned about this semester. I feel like the younger generation, Gen Z, has emotional intelligence down. Everything that I learned about emotional intelligence prior to this class really stemmed from social media. I mean, people have been talking about it like crazy for the last couple of years. Prior to, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, I'm not sure if I'd ever heard the term emotional intelligence before. And it was just not something like it's something that when you read about it, it aligns with you, but maybe like in my case, I didn't know that there was a term for it. But emotional intelligence in the job place can be, really important, especially when you have multiple cultures coming together. So I know emotional intelligence is a huge talking point in the US right now. It's not necessarily a huge talking point in other countries. It's, the cultural differences are immense, and learning how to work with that is extremely important in a position such as the one that I'm holding, where I have to work with people from all over the world. Um, Diversity is necessary for creativity. It's important to know, it's also important to know your own biases, especially if you have a bias towards a diverse group of people, for example. Learning how to be aware of your biases, that way they don't control the decisions that you make. Um, uh, there's a lot of biases towards the different groups that I work with, and I hear them all the time. I see them on social media all the time. I don't agree with any of those things, so in that sense, they don't affect me, but I am aware when I am speaking to US clients that when I say something like my company is based out of Israel, that there may be some kind of a bias against or for them because of that. So depending on who I'm speaking to, I do always try to feel out the customers a little bit and see what what their reaction to certain political topics is, so that I know how to approach things like the topic of my coworkers being from a place that is as, politicized right now, I guess, as Israel is. Um, Motivation can come from many different things. This is another thing that we learned. So for me, I've always been like, I've been kind of a money motivated person. Pay me more and I will do whatever. That excites me. But as a manager, you don't always have the power to say, yes, I will give you a bonus, or yes, I will give you a raise. So learning how to work with things that are within your means to motivate your employees is extremely important. Unfortunately, I don't have an example from my personal life for the motivation part, because I don't have anyone that I'm managing. I'm managing a region, but no people. I'm the only one. So I'm going to use a friend's example instead. And I used this one earlier in the semester in one of our videos as well. But one of my friends is a team lead, and they have various methods of rewarding their workers. And one of the things that he came up with, and this is still up for debate with the higher management team right now if they're going to give this to him or not. But when workers come in and they show up late, they get points put against their their profile, and if they get enough points, eventually they're released from the company, they're fired. So he's working right now, if they meet certain KPIs, to have those points removed from their profile so that, they're not this much closer to being fired anymore. And I thought that was a really interesting reward. It was one I definitely never heard of before, and I think it was really creative on his part to come up with this idea. But there's other methods as well, like job design and job enlargement. For me, my job has been immensely enlarged since first starting here. That was not necessarily a point of motivation for me, but it's also a point of, I guess, pride. I'm happy to say that, hey, I am doing all of these things, and they are all my responsibility. That is a point of motivation for myself. Performance monitoring is helpful to both the company and the individual. That is not something that we're actively doing in my company, and it is something that I think would be beneficial, but also only if the company upholds their end of whatever the reward is supposed to be for meeting KPIs. That is historically an issue within my company. Bonuses are promised, KPIs are not given. Bonuses are promised, KPIs are given, and then it is argued that they were not met according to certain standards or something that were not previously discussed. So historically, my company has been really bad about actually handing out the rewards, which is a huge, it's really demotivating. It's difficult to want to do the extra work when you know that it's most likely you're not going to get anything, or at least not 100% of what you thought you were going to get because you met the KPIs. But having those performance reviews is important to know where you're at and where you can improve. Conflict is not all bad. My coworkers, especially the folks from Israel, they're really big on just telling you how they feel right in the moment. So there are a lot of yelling matches. If somebody has one point of view and somebody else disagrees, if they have the same point of view but somehow they haven't figured out that they're arguing the same point, they'll just yell at each other until they reach an agreement, which is really interesting because in the US you wouldn't do something like that, especially a lower level manager yelling at somebody like the CEO. And that did happen maybe a week ago. And it's just completely normal culturally for that sort of an exchange to take place. Here in the US, conflict is viewed so differently that we have to apparently put it in a book and say, hey, it's okay to have conflict. And I mean, that was news to me, but I understand it now because of this lesson. Like, if you have a problem with something a person is doing and you don't address it, that will eventually fester into just having general problems with that person and every little thing that they do. So addressing conflict is necessary. It's not always bad, but it has to be managed properly in order to not turn into something worse. And then last, organizational design can have an effect on performance and mental health. So the way an organization is set up and runs, it's important to know that before you're applying and before you go in there, so you know what to expect as a person. But also, once you're in the work area, you as a manager, if you're in a manager's position, have the ability to change the design or the layout of the office potentially and make it more comfortable for everyone who works there. I work in a virtual position, so I don't really have much to say here besides the fact that when I started this position, I was very excited to work from home. Now that I've been doing it for over 2 years, I've reached a point where I would be really excited to get to work with my coworkers in person because I just miss interaction with people. So if I was, for example, now to go look for a different job, I would probably look for something that was a mix where, a couple days in the office, a couple days working from home or something like that, just because I've realized I've reached a point where I miss interacting with people in person instead of just over Teams or on the phone. But that is all I have. Thank you so much, and thank you for a great semester.